Eyes wide open. If you think Dogman is just a legend, keep watching. From shadowy figures stalking rural backroads, from towering wolf-like creatures emerging from the tree line, these sightings have left witnesses shaken, speechless, and forever changed. If you've ever wondered what really growls in the wilderness after sunset, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
I've come across a lot of creatures in my travels. A lot of them just want to be left alone. To be able to live in the solitude of nature. I understand that. Most humans aren't the understanding type. They can't leave things alone. They hate what they don't understand. I used to believe that hatred was solely a human trait. Then I encountered a monster whose hatred has followed me for years. God help you if you ever find yourself in the presence of the Dogman.
I just get this cold feeling, and I get goosebumps all on the left side of my body. And I'm looking. I look to where the cold feeling's coming from, and I just see this massive black dog. Biggest dog I've ever seen in my life. And my grandmother my mother's mother, she used to have these, they were German Shepherd Great Dane mixes. And she had them around the house. These things were massive. This thing was bigger than that. And it was just, you could see the muscle underneath the fur. It was black, shaggy fur. What hit me wasn't the smell. When I started noticing things, I'm looking at it through its profile. It has a massive chest, not dog-like, because the dogs would go down, would cave in, would do that little thing. But no, it was like this, like it had pectorals, and its arms were wrong, but you could see the muscle in them. And then its waist tapered very thinly. And then it had what I could only, have you ever seen like the back legs of a very muscular, like a cane corso or something?
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine something like 3 or 4 times muscular than that. And at the end, what I saw.
So it had dog legs.
It had dog legs. It had like very dog-like legs. And it was just, its paws, its feet, the end of those legs were paws, but they were like massive. There was fur coming out of like it was very strange. And I see kind of like a tail, and as I'm like done doing like that little, this is all within like maybe 2-3 seconds, and this thing kind of just looks at me, and I can feel the hate coming off of this thing, almost as if. Now that I think about it, it's like I just summoned this thing, or I just brought this thing into this plane, and this thing hates me for it. I know what a wolf sounds like. This thing was not that. It was like a deep rumbling. Like I felt it in my bones. Now I know what infrasound is. It felt like what people describe infrasound. That's what it felt like. I like my muscles, nothing wanted to budge. And then I just felt, it almost felt like something pushed me. I felt a hand on my back, and I just sprinted as fast as I could. Mind you, I'm over here off the trail. I'm running towards the trail now as fast as I can. I'm hopping logs. This thing is keeping track with me. And I can tell this thing could probably catch up to me. It can kill me. This thing is playing with me. And over by the trail, I see 2 large, dark figures, way bigger than what a person would be. Massive shoulders, like conical heads. And I'm over here, I just look at these things, and I'm afraid as well. Like I well up with fear. Like I'm over here like, all right, what did I do? And I'm thinking this thing is a hunting dog. Those are the masters.
Far enough to where she could see the muzzle, the ears. You see, it looked like a big wolf. It looked up at her. She said when it looked up at her and locked eyes with her, she's like instant fear, like paralyzed. And this thing locked eyes with her, casually got up on 2 feet. And that's when it really freaked him out. Got up, picked up the roadkill and walked off.
A year later, I was in the same valley, about kilometer 6, driving in an old pickup truck with a bench seat. And I noticed on the passenger side, down the hill below me, what I thought was a black bear on the creek bank. I stopped the truck, slid across the seat to have a look. But at the time, I had a clear view all the way down. And there was a gravel bar on the far side of the creek. And as I was driving this way, I spotted it from the driver's side, slid across the seat of the truck to look down. It stood up and walked up that hillside. Probably would have taken me 10 minutes to clamber up that hill over logs and brush and so on. It walked up there in about a minute and a half. You know, it was obvious what it was. It was not a bear.
The Peru Amateur Circus is held there every summer. And ironically, someone also had a Dogman experience. Well, they actually call it a werewolf. During that in 1990, when that circus was going on, they were down on a river and a werewolf ran into their camp. This was 17 years before I ever had my experience. And I recently just talked to someone 2 weeks ago, same exact area that they said they're on bicycles and a upright running Dogman, werewolf, whatever you want to call it, come walking out in their pathway where they're riding their dirt bike or their bicycles or whatever as kids. And they all got scared and pedaled off home. And they never really talked about it, I guess, because it's weird though, because I did the same thing. Like when you see these things, it's like you instantly don't want to talk about it afterwards. So I don't know if that's like because people think you're crazy.
Some weird shit going on, y'all. Some weird shit. Y'all gotta stay on your toes. Or the wolf man might bite them mugs off. Stay up on. So I'm gonna show y'all an area I was patrolling one night. And when I came up over this hill with my lights and spotted the situation going on, everybody scattered. Everybody was out. It was like roaches. So I'm driving up right when my lights hit the situation, ran up this big hill in like 3 jumps, 2, 3. You see how big this hill is? Look at the building and then look at the hill. I had to rethink life all in that second because I thought I was crazy. I'm like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Is you okay? How's your blood pressure? Is you good? You got a fever? Cannot stress enough when I tell you CERN is really out here doing some shit. We are living in a supernatural world. We are fighting against supernatural principalities of this world. I have been through so much spiritually. Okay, so this thing ran over this hill, and look where this hill leads to. The Missouri River. So, y'all know what they say about things that lead to the river. That's where all the animals and stuff go. That's where the food and stuff is. And voila.
So I had an experience over the weekend that I wanted to share with you guys. And while I'm nap trapped, I thought I would just quickly give you the details. So I was driving through a spur, so where you're kind of like the road's cutting through mountains. And it was about 9:30 a.m. on the Sunday morning. And out of my side view, I saw this big black blob keeping pace with my car, like running along the side of the mountain. I would have been doing anywhere from 40 to 60 Ks because as you come through bends, like you kind of change in speed. But it was keeping pace with my car. And I was like, what is that? I focused on it for about 20 seconds and then it was gone. But it was the biggest, it was like it was so much bigger than a bear, like big and black, and its legs and arms were really long. So as it kind of was running, both legs and hands kind of hit together, and then it would fling its arms and legs out. But I was so shocked that my brain was like not wanting to believe what I saw, even though I focused on it for 20 seconds, and 20 seconds is actually quite long. I was like, I actually watched it. And then I was like, can't be, what is that? My brain did not want to believe what I saw. My son clarifying what I saw was even more frightening, because we don't have in Australia animals or anything like that. In this area, we have black cats, potential sightings, but this was so much bigger, and how fast it was going. It's really freaked me out, really freaked me out. And I've talked to my partner about this because, we've got an outside toilet and stuff. At nighttime now, I'm super scared to go outside. And we looked more into it because my partner's into certain things about, he's looked into all the mythologies of different things, Bigfoot and Yowies and Dogmen and all that type of stuff. And we looked into the region we're in because we're right near, the Great Dividing Range is on our back door. So we looked into our town and our region, and there has been over several sightings of something very similar or weird, but this big black creature, even to the point of it standing on its legs and standing upright like a human. We had another person actually spotting, big prints in the ground and having their campsites raided, and those prints being all around, and just a range of different stories. And the surrounding areas around us have also had lots and lots of sightings. And the weirdest thing is they're all similar to what I saw. All really similar. So, yeah. Partner has said, though, if it happens again, we're out of here.
In Pennsylvania, there's a stretch of land people call the Lykan Loop. It's not marked on any map, but it runs from the back roads outside of Pittsburgh, cuts north towards Erie, then bends back through the woods near Harrisburg in this long, wide arc. Over decades, reports of upright dog-like creatures keep popping up along this loop. Same descriptions, same behavior, same roads, but different people. All people who've never met each other. Most of these encounters are random, on empty roads, on quiet trails. Some people think it's just a coincidence, while others think something moves that entire stretch of land. So this story takes us to a man named Tyler. Tyler was driving home from a late shift around 12:45 a.m. The roads were empty, just dense woods, dips in the pavement, and long stretches where your headlights feel swallowed by trees. He wasn't speeding. He was going maybe about 45 miles an hour. Then something out of the blue came out of the opposite lane and lunged across the road. He hit it dead center. Bam! The impact wasn't a full thud of hitting a deer. It didn't bounce. It didn't slide. It slammed onto the hood with the weight that pushed the front end down, like the whole engine dropped. The windshield cracked in a spiderweb pattern right in front of his face. Tyler braked so hard the tires screamed and he skidded sideways into the gravel. And for a moment he just sat there, breathing in sharp, panicky little bursts. But the hood was empty. Whatever he hit had rolled off. So he grabs a flashlight and steps out. He said his legs were shaking and his throat was tight. The smell hit him first. Hot, metallic, musky. Like wet fur left in the sun. His hood was dented inward, deep enough that it nearly touched the engine block. The windshield was cracked and the entire front grille was packed with thick, coarse hair. Clumps of dark fur that looked worn out, not shed. He crouched to look for the animal, but there was no body, no drag marks. But then he spotted something in the ditch. Movement. Slow, heavy movement. The beam of his flashlight caught a shape trying to push itself upright with long limbs that didn't move like a deer or bear. It struggled, one leg kicking weakly. Then it rolled into a crouch position, upright, but hunched, and it turned its head towards him. He said the eyes reflected low to the ground, but the body wasn't low. Tyler said the thing stood fully upright for half a second, wobbling like it was deciding to come towards him or back into the woods. Then it limped, dragging one leg across the ditch and into the tree line without making a sound heavier than a whisper of branches. Tyler got back into his car and drove home. The fur, he swears it wasn't from any animal he's ever seen. He still says he hit something that shouldn't exist out there.
His grandmother was a witch. They lived by the Russian border. The Russian soldiers would come over and pillage and plunder. They couldn't do anything about it. So she had him do a ritual to invite a weird spirit into him that would be triggered by anger or fear. So if he got, you remember the Incredible Hulk?
Yeah.
Like he would say, "You're making me angry. You don't want to see me when I'm angry," right?
Yeah.
It was about transmogrification, right? The whole series was about that. So anyway, the long and short of it is he told me all the story of how it happened and how he had lived with that for years. And he was now a professor in an Ivy League college. I said, how's that work with having a weird spirit? He says, I don't get mad. He said, people make fun of me, but if something's, I can feel it start to happen. He said, I'll just grab my briefcase and head for home. We were able to get him free of that. But
that night?
Yeah, that afternoon.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, he was married. His wife was thrilled. She
probably saw him a time or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, she was a little tiny thing. He's a big old dude. He probably weighed, I don't know, 260 or something, big guy. And she maybe weighed 100 pounds. She was a little Asian lady. And I said, you've seen this happen? She says 3 times.
Mm.
And she's real cute. I said, wow, you're a pretty brave lady. She says, not brave at all. She said, it's very scary. I said, I get that. It would be very scary. But you still sleep in the same bed with him at night? She said, yeah. She said, he's very nice when he's not a wolf. If you think you know everything, you're guaranteed to be wrong about a whole bunch of stuff because it's not a possibility that any human knows everything. This topic, we know there are transmogrification spirits. I think we also know there are beings that are fallen. They're interdimensional entities.
Yeah.
But, what I have learned is I have been surprised enough in my life and wrong enough in my life that I'm never again going to disbelieve somebody just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm never going to just say, well, that sounds strange. I don't believe it.
It was about 30 yards in, but it stayed with me, level with the truck. Didn't bolt away, didn't run off. It kept pace, like it was walking along the edge for a reason. I let off the gas and eased the truck into reverse, one hand on the wheel, phone steady in the other. It was moving towards me, and then it threw its arms out wide. One motion, then again. Not frantic, not clumsy, deliberate. Like it was saying plain as day, stay out of here.
I moved back to the Aderondex with my dad. I've been here for 2 months. All of a sudden, I keep hearing like screams in the distance, like coyotes or foxes or something. And that's maybe seasonal, maybe, but it's so interesting. And I don't know what property it's coming from because I'm pretty sure these are all acreage lined houses with like several acres to themselves, and maybe it's across the river. I don't know, but it's cool. It's very interesting. It's a Dogman.
And I see something that's about the size of my fist, and it's shining bright red, and it looks like almost like a bicycle reflector. And I'm thinking, what heck is that? You know, what could that be? And all of a sudden, this thing turns its head, and I realize that it was an eyeball. And I get a glimpse of the other eyeball, and even though it's behind a tree, each eye is on either side of the tree.
Oh, wow.
That's how big this creature was. And it was immediate shock. I didn't know what to think, even though, I know Sasquatch are real. To see that bright of red eye shine a mere 50 feet from me was quite shocking. No smell, which was interesting. But later that night, all night long, and it ended up just backing out and dipping down behind this rock outcrop, and I didn't see any more eye shine after that. But it got a long, good look at me, which I would say a good 5, 6, 7 seconds. It just sat there and stared at me while I was trying to figure out what I was looking at. With the Dogman, that seems totally different. They seem to not care about a human presence other than they want to get rid of it.
Well, we were sitting around hanging out and watching TV, and cats were laying right here at my feet. Next thing you know, they get up and take off running, tails puffed out, so heard something they didn't like. Been some strange sounds. Heard a few bangs on the house, so they heard something they didn't like, so I decided to check it out. Dark. Can't see a thing out here. Obviously, just by my flashlight. I see the trail. I see the trail going up there. It's coming from the lake, east of here, down by the lake. Down by the lake somewhere. Dark, I see it there. The dog's barking. It's on the house. Moon.
We got down into the woods and we went off into the pine side. Off in the pines, that was where the initial encounter happened. We didn't think anything would happen. Ryan yells over to me and Matt. He tells me, I think there's something watching us. We're looking around. We don't see anything. Well, the next thing you know, Matt looks at me and he said, "Hey, CJ, you smell that?" He said, "Get a whiff of that." Man, it was like wet dog and death. Like there is no foul odor we had smelled. Out of nowhere, Ryan tugs at my arm. He says, "CJ, look straight ahead." I'm looking dead ahead. At 100 yards, we see a shadow figure. We can't really make out what it is. It creeped me out to the point to where I bolted. So it left Matt and Ryan down there in the bottom. I was halfway to the house before I heard one of them scream. I turned around to go back to them. I grabbed Ryan and I told Matt to run. And we got up to the house and I asked Ryan, I said, "Ryan, what did you see?" Now this kid at 12 years old told me that this thing had actually stepped out of the shadows. And what he could see from barely 100 yards was a figure that stood at least 7 to 8 feet tall. And the hands on this thing, he said, it was almost double the size of him and Matt's head. And his arms were actually hanging about a little lower than his knees. I said, "Okay." I said, "What color eyes did you see?" He said they were amber yellow. I said, "Okay." At this point, I'm freaked. I'm totally freaked. I'm thinking this is a joke. Let's go in the house. Let's calm down. Get something to drink, something to eat, and we'll pretend it never happened. Later on that night, Matt went into the kitchen, wanted something to eat, and he spotted it standing right there about 30 feet away from the window. This thing had followed us back up to the house. They saw more of it than I did because when I seen it for the first time, I was in the kitchen. This creature had yellow eyeshine. Its legs were somewhat bent, more so bent than straight. Its arms hung down right past its knees. I want to say it looked like he had long hair, but I couldn't make it out. So I'm standing in the kitchen with Matt. I'm freaked. Matt's freaked. We're not moving. This thing has its eyes set dead on us. Neither one of us say anything to Ryan, but Ryan happens to walk into the kitchen, and the look on his face said it all. This 12-year-old kid seeing this beast out in the woods, just yards from his house. None of us moved. I sat back. I backed up from the window. I took both of my hands, one to Matt, one to Ryan, and I backed him up slowly.
I saw something dark stand up, and when it stood up, the top of the corn probably hit right about here, right about mid-chest. And when it stood up, I hit it. It had eye shine. It had like amber eye shine. And it had ears not any different from Kaylee's. Like it was, the like German Shepherd ears, and it was kind of a dark colored fur. And as soon as it stood up, Kaylee yelped and she took off to the front door of our house. And of course, my sister and I, it kind of, because when you're seeing something like that, it takes you a minute. You're just like, what am I looking at? Like, what am I? And, she took off. She's pawing at the door. I'm like, what the hell is this? What am I looking at? And it's just kind of standing there. And I don't know, I saw it dead in the face. Like it looked like a werewolf. That's just the best way to describe it. It looked like a werewolf. The ears, the fur, the kind of muzzle, it didn't have like a super long snout, but it wasn't like coyote. It was very much wolf-like. I didn't see teeth, but it was just, and I locked eyes with it briefly. And that's but it seemed like it was more interested in Kaylee.
Now, there are things we know and understand about this world, and then there are things about this world that we don't know, but we think we understand. This is one of those things that we don't understand at all. Watch.
Oh my God, did you see it?
See?
No.
Oh, hold on, wait a second.
No, we've not seen it.
Get out of here. Find out what that thing was.
It's coming now.
Sorry, man.
We gotta go, like, right now. Now. What? There it is.
Did you see it? Do you see it?
No, hold on.
What the guy got eyes like
camera. There it is.
You tell me, what got eyes like that? That's in the woods. What's got eyes like that, man?
That is, oh my gosh.
Jump in the water.
Tell me.
Are you serious?
Oh my gosh. What the heck?
So this is my first story that I've received about a wolf man. A wolf man or dog man. I think it's called the dog man. I don't know. But Jake from Georgia said he was out walking through the swamp at night, checking traps. I don't know he didn't say what he was trapping. I'm assuming I don't know what people trap in Georgia. But anyway, he was out in the swamps walking through the water. And he said he heard a noise. And at first it startled him because it sounded like there was a dog. And he's like, there can't be a dog out here. I'm standing in water all the way up halfway to my waist. He said, and all of a sudden he heard a growl. He pulled out his phone because he could see something moving. First thing he thought was, is that a bear? So he pulls out his phone and he's watching. And this thing lifts up its head and looks right at him. He said he was scared to death, but he just froze and held his phone. He tried to walk backwards in the water and he almost tripped, but he kept the camera of his phone on this thing. He was able to get 2 pictures of it before it turned and ran away. He says, man, I don't know. I know you've probably gotten a lot of weird videos and a lot of strange pictures, he said, but I was a little nervous about sending you this because I feel crazy. And I'm like, wow, it's cool. I'm like, I appreciate you sending these pictures. I'm going to post them and see if we can get some information from other people and try to find out what exactly this thing is in Georgia. But all I could think of was like a dog that walks on its back legs, a werewolf, dog man. I don't know. I've never seen nothing like it. But he said the thing looked kind of like a black German shepherd. But when it stood up, it was like almost 6 foot tall. And then it turned and ran away on its back legs, on 2 legs. It wasn't a dog. Check out the pictures and tell me if you've ever seen anything like this before. And if you can tell me what in the hell this thing is.
John's laying there in his sleeping bag in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, when he hears it. Something massive moving through their campsite. This isn't a raccoon. This isn't even a bear. Whatever's out there is walking on 2 legs. 3 different states, 4 separate accounts, all describing the exact same thing. The government calls these reports misidentified wildlife. But when you see the footage captured by different witnesses, you'll realize we're dealing with something else entirely. Something that's been watching us all along. On the evening of April 14th, 2019, John and 2 friends were at an overnight camping trip in a remote corner of Nebraska. They'd driven out to this spot specifically because it was known for having some pretty good fishing, and they were planning on spending a few days just relaxing by the water, catching fish, and enjoying being away from civilization. The 3 friends had set up their individual tents in a small clearing about 50 yards away from the lake and had spent most of that first day fishing and hanging around their campfire. So by the time night fell, they were all pretty tired from the long drive and their day of activities, so they decided to turn in relatively early. Each of them crawled into their own tent, zipped up, and settled in for a peaceful night's sleep. But around 1 in the morning, John was suddenly jolted awake by this strange noise. It sounded like something was moving around their campsite. And at first, he was kind of groggy and disoriented, but as he lay there listening, he could tell that whatever was out there was big, and I mean really big. The way it was moving through their camp and knocking things around, stepping on stuff, this wasn't just a raccoon or a possum. It had to be something of substantial size. He's laying there in his sleeping bag, and he's just thinking that this has got to be a bear. I mean, northern Nebraska has bears, and they're out in the middle of nowhere. They're near water, and they've been fishing all day, right? Those are perfect circumstances to draw on a bear. But even as he's convincing himself of this, he's starting to feel really uneasy because the sounds that he's hearing, these grunting, growling noises, don't quite match any bear he's ever heard, or any other animal for that matter. Pretty soon, the noises are loud enough that they wake up the other 2 friends in their tents too, and so now all 3 of them are lying in their separate shelters, wide awake, listening to this large animal shuffling around their campsite. And of course, they're all thinking the same thing, right? It's got to be a bear, but there's just things that aren't adding up. This goes on for like 20 or 30 minutes, and then suddenly it just stops entirely, and they can't hear any more sounds. And so John quietly gets up, slowly unzips his tent, and he pokes his head around to get a look. But it's so dark that he can't see anything. But he can't hear where this large animal has gone either, but it looks like the coast is clear. So he climbs out of his tent and quickly goes over to where his friends are sleeping, and he just kind of gently taps the side of the tent to get their attention. And he whispers to them that he thinks whatever it was has moved on, but that they should all get up and stay awake for a while, just in case. He just doesn't feel great about it. His friends all agree, so all 3 of them climb out of their tents and gather around the campfire, which by now is pretty much just glowing embers. So the first thing they decide to do is to add more wood to the fire to get it started again, and they figure having a big fire going will help keep whatever it is out there at a distance. And once that's done, they then sat around the fire and discussed what they had heard. And even as they reassured each other, they were still pretty spooked. And after sitting out there for a while, they start getting drowsy and getting ready to head back to sleep. And suddenly, from off to the left, there's this incredible noise. And I'm talking extremely loud, like a massive tree falling over. All 3 of them spin around toward the sound, but they can't see a thing beyond the light of the fire. And all 3 of them hear movement in the brush, maybe 30 or 40 feet away from them. And suddenly they hear this deep, angry growl coming from the darkness. Whatever it came from was intentionally keeping away from the light of the fire, like it didn't want to be seen. All three of them realized that the animal that this growl came out of did not sound at all like a bear. It was so much deeper and throatier. And so completely petrified by this, one of the friends runs back into his tent, grabs his handgun. I mean, he wasn't messing around. It was a welcome sight by all. They realized pretty quickly that they would need a lot more than a measly 9mm to survive, because from not far away comes a long howling noise. But this one is much more powerful than any normal howl. Thinking quickly, they start immediately building up their fire even more and just throwing as much wood on they can to just get it big and bright and roaring, and they grab their powered lanterns and they turn them all on, placing them strategically around the perimeter of the camp just to try and create this dome of light. Not only do they want to stay safe in the light, but they want to be able to get enough light cast out that they can see whatever this thing is if it does decide to come any closer. But despite all the light that they've created, their stalker doesn't seem discouraged. They could still hear it moving around out there, just circling back and forth. Sometimes it would be on one side, and then moments later, they'd hear it on the complete opposite side without ever hearing it go around. It was clearly stalking them and testing their defenses, maybe waiting for the right opportunity. Realizing this, John and his unarmed friend grab some thick tree limbs to use as clubs. They then form a small circle around their fire with their backs to it so they could be ready in case they were to be ambushed. This entire time, they don't see any movement or anything in the dark. Toby, one of the friends who's holding a large branch, suddenly freezes as he's looking off to his right. Now, John immediately notices and asks if he's okay, but Toby doesn't answer right away. And John realizes that whatever Toby is looking at is now just beyond the reach of the fire. And a moment later, Toby finally seems to snap out of it, and he turns to his friends and just tells them there's something right there. But he's struggling because his voice is shaky and he's very scared. He tells what he thinks it might be, but none of his friends have a clue what on earth he's talking about. It was very obvious he was struggling to find the words to describe what he saw. However, none of them believed what he suggested. But Toby was incredibly insistent and was like, guys, I know what it is we're dealing with here. It's the only thing that makes sense. And as soon as he said this, he realized that the thing off to his right wasn't there anymore. And then came the grunting sounds and the growling and the howling, still extremely close by. And in fact, John later recounted that these sounds were so strange that it kind of sounded like whatever this animal was trying to communicate with them. But by this point, all of them were feeling pretty grim about the situation because they had no idea what animal they were up against. They had never dealt with something like this before. And the only thing they could do was keep their backs to the fire and keep their perimeter defended. After this continued on for about another 10 minutes, this animal began to get closer to the firelight, enough to where John could actually start to see it. One of John's friends saw this and started going into a full-blown panic. He immediately fired a shot into the ground near where this thing was standing. And as soon as that happened, this animal jumped backwards into the dark, and John and his friends could hear it kind of scurrying away, and they could hear it crashing through the underbrush and it moving away from them. But it only lasted a few seconds because then all the sounds stopped. It was evident right then and there that this retreat wasn't an escape attempt. It was still out there and waiting for the right opportunity to come back. They weighed their options and kicked the idea around of leaving right then and there, but the idea that this unknown predator could be very close frightened them. With very limited light, it would be like walking into a death trap, and they realized their best course of action would just be to keep an eye out, make it through the night, and once they had daylight on their side and they could see, then they would leave. So of course, it's no surprise that sleep did not come, but they took all the proper precautions. They kept their fire built up as high as they possibly could, their guns at the ready, and sure enough, whatever animal this was came back and continued prowling around. And sometimes when they listened really closely, they could hear it coming so close that they could hear its breathing, like it was watching their every movement, just waiting for the right moment to strike. In what felt like a night of living, dawn finally came. Now, with the sun shining brightly, there were no strange noises or sounds or any evidence that this large animal was nearby, but they didn't take time to thoroughly investigate. They used it as an opportunity to get the heck out of Dodge. The animal that John and his two friends saw was most certainly not a bear. At least, it didn't look like it. What they described was a very large bipedal wolf, 7 to 7.5 feet tall, covered in white and gray fur, complete with a pair of pointed ears and reflecting yellowish eyes. It was evident that this clearly wasn't someone in a costume. The incredible muscle mass of this animal was like that of a bodybuilder. The arms hung past down the knees and had what appeared to be actual hands with fingers, each one ending in long, black, curved claws. Not paws, but actual hands with fingers. And your eyes naturally go down, right, of the torso. They could see that, like a canine, its torso tapered down at its waist, and even the back legs were hawk-jointed like a dog's. Now, when Toby tried to explain to John and their other friend what he was pretty sure this was, he believed they had encountered a dogman.
The only reason I saw it was because it was blacker than the shadows behind it. Kind of made it off-put from the background. And I'm thinking, there's a demon in the bushes with horns. And it stood up and its ears moved. And that's when I realized they were ears and not horns. And I got a good look at it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a flipping werewolf. Now this thing was so big. I mean, like so tall. Its shoulders and neck were really broad, like it was wearing football gear or something, but the rest of the body was skinny and lean. I don't know how I unlocked my mind from the panic and terror that had just suddenly washed over me, but I've got my feet up from under me and I started running as hard as I could down the trail. I just dropped my towel and everything and just hauled it as hard as I could. When I was about halfway down the trail, I turned and looked back to see if it was chasing me. And I swear, Vic, I swear it was standing exactly the same distance away from me as it was the first time, about 15 to 20 feet. But it was in the middle of the trail this time. And I saw it had dog legs, but I was terrified and I was not paying attention to its hands or feet or anything like that. It had a long snout, but it never opened its mouth. I never got to see its tongue or its teeth or anything like that. It was just simply casually watching me and waiting, which made it kind of even creepier because I didn't know what to expect from it. So I ran as hard as I could back to the parking area. And Mom and Dad and the friends were sitting down there waiting for me. I screamed, there's a werewolf after me. And they all laughed real big. And one guy said, he's going to write books when he's older. He's got a heck of an imagination. But I know I didn't imagine that. It didn't chase me out of the woods, but it definitely followed me.
November of 1995. A father and his 2 teenage sons locked themselves inside a rented cabin in northern Wisconsin while something circled the building in the dark. The father called the sheriff's department. His voice was shaking so badly the sheriff had to ask him to repeat himself twice. He said he could hear it walking on the porch. He said he could hear it breathing. He said when it passed in front of the windows, the shadow was too tall and too wrong to be a person. The sheriff drove out there with a shotgun and a spotlight. He searched the tree line. He checked the perimeter. And then he sat the father down and told him it was a bear. The sheriff knew it was not a bear. He had known for 11 years what actually lived in those woods. He had photographs. He had plaster casts of tracks. He had a locked drawer full of yellow legal pads documenting encounters going back decades. He told the man it was a bear because that is what 3 successive sheriffs of that county had been doing since 1963. Lying. Systematically. To everyone. That sheriff's name was Dale Whitfield. He carried a badge in Price County, Wisconsin for 31 years. And after 4 years of retirement spent sitting on his porch watching the same tree line, listening to the same sounds moving through the timber behind his house, he decided the silence had gone on long enough. What he revealed is one of the longest-running institutional cover-ups in rural American law enforcement. Not a conspiracy with shredded documents and midnight meetings. Something quieter, something worse. 3 sheriffs, 57 years, at least 12 documented encounters, at least 3 people dead, and a community that trusted its law enforcement to tell them the truth and never got it.
So this deep-rooted government official that we have to keep anonymous, his position, and I think it was in Alaska, but I can't give you guys an exact area, but he made it his mission in general for the military was to hunt and locate locations where these dogmen are seen. He hunts these dogman creatures and reports locations to be prepared for future government access. Hey, there's a threat here. We can't come here until we get rid of this. Or, I got rid of the threat. It's neutralized. We can do it. They ran into a creature who was begging to not be killed when they caught up to it. So when they ran into this creature, they thought this was the biggest threat. But this creature told them, hey, come with me. I want to show you something. And reluctantly, they both went, which is, to me, is crazy. Because if you see a creature like this, I don't know if I'd follow it.
What's interesting about this is it's basically affirming that it can be killed by us.
Yeah.
It's worried.
It was scared.
It's worried that our military could catch up, kill it, do the things that caught up to it, obviously. Our weaponry. So who knows if our weaponry can actually take them out. If these things are Nephilim, whatever, right? That's just a totally different subject.
Yeah.
But it was scared of us. It was scared of our military.
Yeah. They went deep into this open cavern and found clothing. They were looking at this in awe, looking at this creature, and it said, this is a kill site. And this is what you should be hunting. Who did speak English, by the way. And it alludes to this Christopher thing. Like, he was able to speak English. He had the dogman head.
Yeah, like the jaw is literally moving as it's talking. Right?
It's like, hey, this is a kill site, but it looks like a wolf. Like, that's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
But this is a real story. So I'm like, I have to give it some credence, because he wouldn't give that up if he didn't mean it.
They say deep in the forest near Bray Road, something walks on 2 legs, but isn't human. Late one night, a driver pulled over after seeing a huge figure crouched by the roadside. At first, it looked like a man, until it stood up, tall, muscular, covered in dark fur, with the head of a wolf and glowing eyes. It stared straight at him, then bolted into the trees faster than anything he'd ever seen. Locals call it the Dogman. Sightings have gone back decades. And the creepiest part, the witnesses all described the exact same thing.
People always ask what the scariest part of driving through Appalachia at night is. For me, it wasn't the breakdown, or the pitch black road, or the dead silence around me. It was the thing that slammed into my hood before I even got a chance to call for help. This happened 3 years ago, and I still get nervous every time I drive through those mountains at night. I was heading home from visiting a friend in eastern Kentucky. It was late, past midnight, and I was taking one of those winding back roads that cut through the Appalachian foothills. There was no towns and no lights, just woods on both sides that stretches on. It makes you feel like you're driving through a tunnel made of trees. About halfway through the drive, my car started sputtering. The engine light came on, so I pulled over to the narrow gravel shoulder. I didn't have a signal on my phone. There was no cars passing, and no houses for miles. It was just me, my dead engine, in the dark. I popped the hood, but honestly, I didn't know what I was looking at. And that's when I heard it. A snapping in the trees. Not like a twig, like a thick branch being stepped on. I froze. I first thought it was a deer, until I heard this low, wet breathing, almost like something trying to breathe through fluid, sick, struggling, animalistic-like. I backed towards the car and didn't take my eye off the tree line. Then something slammed in the back of my car, hard. The whole vehicle rocked, metal groaned, and I felt the impact through my ground. My first thought was it was a bear. I mean, it had to be. Nothing else was that heavy out here. But then it hit the side, not with its paws, but with something long, like a limb or a branch. The impact left a long smear across the door, like mud mixed with, I don't know, something thicker. I jumped inside and slammed the lock and got as low as I could. The windows were fogging from my breath, but I could still see enough to catch a shadow moving around the car. It was moving fast and low, and it wasn't walking like any animal I've ever seen. It circled the car twice, breathing that wet, raspy breath. Every hair on my body stood straight up. Then something scraped across my rear bumper. Long, slow, and metallic scraping, like claws being dragged. I kept repeating to myself, it's just a sick animal. It's just a sick animal. Because the alternative just didn't make any logical sense. Then the car dipped. Like whatever it was put its weight on the trunk, enough to make the whole back end sink towards the ground. My suspension creaked. I held my breath so hard my chest was burning. After what felt like forever, the weight lifted, and the breathing moved towards the passenger side. And that's when I saw it. It was just a silhouette, but the shape was disturbing. It was too tall for a dog, too bent for a bear. The head was tilted like it was listening, and there was this smell. I've never smelled anything like this before, like wet leaves mixed with rot. I don't remember making the decision. I just turned the keys out of reflex, even though the car had already died earlier. And somehow, maybe it just overheated, I don't know. Somehow, the engine caught. Weak, sputtering, choking. But it caught. I floored it. Gravel sprayed everywhere. And something hit the back of the car as soon as I pulled away, hard enough to dent the trunk. I didn't stop driving for almost an hour. The next morning I checked the damage. Deep, ragged scratches. Mud smeared in patterns that didn't look like paws. One long dent on the trunk like something had sat on it. And a patch of coarse, dark fur stuck on the bumper. The mechanic said and looked at it like I hit a large animal. I don't know, but the placement of dents didn't make sense. The fur didn't match anything he recognized, and the scratches on the passenger side window went upward, not downward, like something had reached up instead of down. People tell me to this day it was just a rabid animal, a bear with mange, a sick coyote, something explainable. But I've been in Appalachian woods my whole life. I've never seen or heard anything that moved like that. And I hope I never do again.
Driving down the road, and they were, having a couple beers. I know you shouldn't do that. That's not correct, whatever. And it was weird because one of them made a joke like one of them threw the beer can out and says, dude, as soon as you're done drinking that, throw it out, because if you get pulled over and you got an open beverage container, And so they're driving along, and one of them said, hey, you should throw that out or whatever. And he goes, watch me throw it and hit he made a joke, like it was a joke. And it was so weird because he goes, watch me throw it and I'll hit Bigfoot and it'll come chase us. And they're like, wouldn't that be scary if something like that happened? Like one of them said that. And then a few minutes later, they see this thing walk out in the middle of the road, and it just, as it got out in front of their car, it slowed down, which they thought was just so weird. Like, why would this thing, it was on two legs. They said it just walked out in the middle of the road on two legs. The legs were, the quintessential Dogman looking legs, the backward, and they said that it walked out there and it had this like really thin, midsection, then these big shoulders and these skinny arms. And they said that it had these really long pointy ears. And they were like, what the heck is that? And then it kind of moved slowly at the last second and they clipped it. Well, when they hit it, it literally went flying like off to the right, off into the ditch. And their car began to spin around, and then they went off into a ditch and then back up onto the road. And there was nobody out there. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And, they were like, dude, and they were scared because they'd been drinking. And they were like, well, do we call the police? So at first the driver was like, no, we're not calling the police. And so the guy told me the story was in the passenger side. And he said they sat there like talking about it in the vehicle. They needed to get out and check the vehicle because they were barely able to drive. It was like going really slow. And he goes, it was like it messed up the transmission or something. He goes, we couldn't go beyond like what seemed like first or second gear. That's what he was telling me. Like it did something, it messed it up. And he said there was steam coming from underneath the hood, whatever, because he goes, the impact was pretty hard. And so he's like, dude, the thing had to have been dead, whatever it was that they hit. Well, a few minutes go by while they're arguing about what to do and if they should call somebody or not because it's, whatever. So he said, well, we got to call somebody for a ride. So they started trying to call his brother. And the driver tried calling his, I think, mom and dad or something. They were in their 20s. And they couldn't get any service. They were like, dude, what the heck's going on here? The phone would not even. And they said, well, if we just sit here, we're just going to be here till the morning, And so like, well, and there's no cars coming by, at that time there was no vehicles. And he said that they sat there on the side of the road and it was so weird because that road is usually pretty busy where they were at. And he goes, there was nobody. I mean, of course it was like a Monday night or something, but he said it was like there was nobody. And so this thing, they look over to the right is the guy in the back seat says, look at that. And they look over to the right and this thing is standing there in the ditch. And he said, it's in the ditch, but it's like, down 3 or 4 feet and it's still about 6 feet tall. He said this thing had to have been 8, 9 feet tall. That's how big it was. And he said it towered over our vehicle. And he said that it was just standing there staring at him and it was like heaving. Its chest was heaving. And they said that it looked like it was bleeding. And they said that it literally took its chest and put its like what looked like a clawed hand over its chest and like kind of flung what looked like blood. And they said, dude, it was dark, we didn't have a flashlight, but it looked like something wet on its chest. And he was like, dude, it was crazy. And he's like, we're all sitting there and our vehicle will not go past like, 15 miles an hour. So we started going that fast as we could. And the thing started lapping our vehicle. He said it was running around the vehicle. And I was like really fast. He goes, no, not like the Flash, but it was lapping our vehicle fast and it was like messing with us. He said at one point it went to the back driver's side, the driver's side in the back seat and started pulling on the door handle. He said it was very big and strong and powerfully built looking thing. It looked like it could just easily
rip the door handle.
Yeah, rip the door handle off. He said, but it's like trying to mess with it. And he said that if I didn't know any better, it was grinning at us and it got down and it smeared like what looked like blood probably
its own
blood on the window and then like made like a hissing noise and blood came out of its mouth and it got all on the window and then it went around to the back and lifted up the back of the car and dropped it and then disappeared into the woods. He's like, we're all sitting there just stunned and we're screaming and we're hysterical. He goes, and none of our phones are working. We can't call. At that point, we were like, to heck with it. We were trying to call 911, and the driver didn't care anymore about a DWI. So he started trying to dial 911 and he goes, all that would happen is it would just say 911, but it wouldn't make the call. And he's like, so what are we doing? We're just trapped here with this thing. This thing gets up out of the ditch again. Like it goes into the ditch. It pops up out of the ditch.
Yeah, it leaves and it comes back.
Yeah, it leaves and it comes back. And he said at this point it goes and it stands right in front of their vehicle and just sat there staring at them. And he said at that point, it just like took both arms and like came down and boom, hit the hood of the vehicle, popping the hood backwards, up backwards. Mm-hmm. And he was like, dude, it was incredible. This thing had so much strength. And then he said that and then it went and it grabbed what he described was like a small tree trunk and like started pushing their vehicle into the road, into the middle of the road. And then at that point, they're in the middle of the road and they see headlights and they're like, oh God, thank goodness somebody's driving, they're coming. This thing throws the log down or piece of wood, whatever, and just nonchalantly walks back off the road and into the woods. And the car just goes around him and goes right by him and just keeps going. Doesn't try to stop, doesn't try to help or do anything. It's just like, oh, some people frantically screaming for help in a car. Let me just drive by.
A horror movie.
We had a noise come in by those oak trees that was just, it was, Tony, it was hideous. And it was a growl. And it was a growl and it was so intense that it rattled the inside of my chest cavity. And it just was it was hideous, man. I mean, I've been on the farm, all my life, and I've seen all different kinds of farm animals. I've hunted bear, I've hunted deer, I've seen all kinds of different things. This was not a typical growl. I've heard bear growls. That's not what this was. And it was so intense that it it did something to me, and I could tell that it was affecting my friend. And it rattled the inside of my body, and I began to notice that it caused my heart to speed up. And it was pumping, and I was getting really excited, but it was an uncomfortable feeling that I cannot describe. But it was like it affected my breathing rate. It was affecting how my heart, and I began to feel nauseous. I began to feel very sick to my stomach, and it became more intense. And then it was almost like I couldn't hear the growl, but I could still feel it inside of me. And it got terrifying. It was terrifying. That's when I felt like I was frozen, that I could not move. I could not move my legs. I couldn't turn around. I could see Harry beside of me, and he was in the same shape. And as a matter of fact, I noticed, and it must have been me as well, but when I looked at my friend, I could tell that he was slumped in his shoulders and was kind of looking straight down. And so all this is going on, and I could still hear objects and things around me. But if you've ever had what you call tunnel vision, and that's what I felt like I had tunnel vision. Things were sped up around me, but yet I was in slow-mo. I was just in slow motion and could not do anything. That's when I heard something come in on the trail beside of us. The same trail that I had used to walk in from my walk beside the creek. And the creek come up behind our camp. Well, there was something coming. I could hear the steps. To be honest, I felt something coming. It was a feeling that I cannot describe, and it felt like, hey, something is coming. And in the fire glow of the camp and in the lantern, which was adjacent to us, I could see movement. And I felt something, and I kept looking, and I'm looking, and I'm catching something walking in, and it is bipedal. And I guess the thoughts of, is this beast, is this man? I don't know what that it is. And as it begins to get closer, I see a bipedal canid type of wolf-like beast. 2 legs, and it's walking towards me. I can't move. I can't use my legs. I can't use my arms. This intense feeling, I'm almost can't breathe. It has sped my rate of breathing up like I had run a race. And this thing's getting closer to me. And as it gets closer to me, I notice the ears on it are erect, and they're like pointed towards me. And it's staying outside the glow of the fire, but it's getting closer and backing away, coming back, going back and forth. And it's pacing left and right. And then it walks in. And as it walks in, I can see this thing sniffing the air. And it's almost as if it's sniffing me. And I look back now, I wonder if it was trying to sniff fear. And then it grins at me. This thing exposes its teeth. And by this point, it comes in close enough, within 15 to 25 yards, and it exposes itself. And I'm seeing something that should not exist. This thing does not exist on this earth. And is it a man in a costume? Is this a hoax being played? Is it a joke? All these things going through my mind. But you got to also understand what is affecting my body. There's something not right with my body. Can't move, can't do anything, and this thing's getting closer. The only thing I could think of at the time was my religious upbringing. And I'm thinking, whatever this is, it's going to take me out. It's going to eat me or kill me. And I began to pray, and I began to pray. And I prayed the shepherd's prayer, David's prayer, the Psalm 23rd. And I began to pray. And when I began to pray, I just felt like I was regaining my mind back, but I could see this thing and it was not moving closer. Now I'm praying in my mind. I'm not praying verbally yet. But this thing's staring at me. I'm staring at it. And I'm saying the prayer. And then I began to verbally pray. And I began to pray hard and louder and louder. Lord is my shepherd, I shall not fear. And by God's grace, I felt stronger. The intensity was still there, but I'm like, if it eats me or whatever. But I'm beginning to gain what I felt at the time. I began to feel strength. And I began to feel stronger. And I felt, I don't know if it was my hands or my leg that moved first, but I moved. I no longer was like a child that was so afraid to get out of its bed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I felt stronger. And at some point, my senses come to me and I moved. And when I moved, my training kicked in and I retrieved my firearm with my right hand. And I had on my possession, it actually was my department issued weapon at the time. And I pulled my firearm and I pointed it at this creature. And when I did, the creature moved backwards. This beast, this demon, whatever I was seeing that should not exist, it moved. And that told me that this animal was intelligent. It was something to the animal. It moved backwards. And I'm standing there and I've got the firearm. You have to understand that we're trained and we know, I mean, in a millisecond, you've got to make decisions. When you let off a round and it leaves the end of your weapon, you've got to know where that round is going to. You've got to know what your target is. You've got to know, is that a man? Is it an animal? And I was real hesitant to pull that trigger. I still could not. I just couldn't fathom that this was anything but a man because it looked so much like a man. And I couldn't pull the trigger. And I lowered my gun. And when I lowered my gun, this creature advanced on me. The beast come closer and started walking towards me. And I felt at that point, it's a given. It's paid for. It's still approaching me. I'm trained to protect myself. I've got someone behind me I've got to take care of too. All these things going through my mind. Everything I've described to you has taken me 3 minutes, 5 minutes. This is what a policeman has to make up his mind in milliseconds. I fired twice. I raised my firearm and I discharged 2 rounds, tac-tac, almost sound like one. At the same time I shoot, simultaneously, whether if it was a sympathetic reaction or what, the man behind me, Harry, discharges his double-barrel shotgun. So I fired 2 rounds, he's fired 2 rounds, but when I fire my 2 rounds, poof, the creature that was in front of me, I don't know where it went. I heard noises going up the wall, but I didn't see it. It was almost as if this thing just dissipated. Yet I heard noises going up the wall. To this day, I don't know what happened and where it went to. But behind me, when my partner discharges his shotgun and he fires 2 times, I hear a squall. I hear a scream. So behind me, I've turned around at this point. I'm still trying to cover from that angle. I'm hearing something above us again. I'm hearing the screams or squall of something that sounds like a cross between a pig and some hideous animal. We've got a solid cane break that is behind these trees that runs along the creek. And I'm seeing the cane, just there's something going crazy in the cane. I also hear my partner running. At this point, he snatched up some stuff that was in the camp, and he's left me.
See you, Martin.
See you, Bubba. I'm leaving
Bubba,
you.
Yeah.
And so Bubba is gone, man. Bubba, he's left Martin, man.
Wow.
And so, I don't know what to think or do. And it's comical looking back now, but I'm frightened out of my wits' end. The only thing I can think of is, hey, if he's leaving, I need to go with him. And so I've still got my firearm in my hand, and you have to understand 32 years of age at that time. So I'm running with my firearm. I say I remember, but honestly, I don't. I don't know how I cleared the bumper on the pickup truck, but I was into the back of the pickup truck immediately. Gun still out. Gun in my holster, I don't know, but I felt like I still had my firearm, my handgun. And I get in the back end of this pickup truck, and I hear Harry hit the ignition, and he cranks up this old big Dodge truck. It's very loud, and he cranks it up, and he's trying to get her going, and in fact, he's rocking back and forth, and I've got my hand, and I'm beating on the top of the roof of this thing. Hurry up, saying all kinds of things, and then it hits me that's emergency brake. And I tell him to pop the brake, and he pops the brake, and at the same time as he starts to move, he cuts his headlamps on. He cuts his headlamps on, and then the realization as to what is taking place. Got creature over here that come in on my backside, that came in off the creek and followed me in. That is a wolf, werewolf, human-looking thing. We got stuff over here in a tree in the cane that possibly has been shot. I got something up on top of the ridge, and then the headlights come on. And when the headlights come on, it's bright enough that 100 to 150 yards out in the middle of this corn patch, where Harry, in fact, had been hunting that day, here's the man in the ghillie suit. But it's not a ghillie suit. And it's not one. There's two creatures. And these things are hideous. And when I tell the story, I don't normally tell the entire story because most people don't want to hear everything. But when I say that these things are not what you depict on TV, and it's not the Patty of California and the Gimlin film, these things were hideous. The headlights hit them. The biggest one is standing on two legs. The second one that was beside the creature, and I can't tell if they were male or female, but the smaller Bigfoot hairy man jumps down on all four. It just sinks to a crawl.
Hold on a second. Bigfoot?
Oh yeah, there's totally. I'm sorry. I'm pretty worked up by this point telling the story.
No, it's fine.
These are not. When I describe the other in detail, and I let you know this is a wolf-like creature, a beast or a half man, half something. When the headlights turn on, I've got an 8-foot hairy man, what I call a hairy man or a Bigfoot, that are not canid lupus, werewolf, anything like you've ever seen or is drawn as a dog man. These are Bigfoot.
Wow.
But they are not Bigfoot, man. They are not pretty Bigfoot like you see Patty waving at you as she walks away. These things are hideous, ugly looking. The tallest, the biggest one is staring straight at me, and I'm seeing teeth. And I'm whether if I'm imagining the look on the face or if it's what I saw, it was not friendly. And I got the feeling that this thing that was staring at me, I felt like there was such sheer hatred, and I could feel what this thing was looking at me. He didn't want to share his lunch. He wasn't there to get a banana. Whatever this creature was sheer hatred. And the one that had ducked down to the ground, the only description that I can give you is just the one on the ground was either frightened or younger because of the headlights coming on, and it was a younger one that was frightened, or if he was going to an attack phase because he went down on all fours. At some point that I'm sitting and looking at this, and I never talk about this part because this is a part that is pretty private for me, but Scott Carpenter goes into something, and others have too, that they speak of mind speak. But I got some type of a message that I felt and that I read just as clear as my mind as if I watched a newspaper. This time, at some point, my partner has put it in park and has thrown the truck in gear and has turned the headlights away from these two hairy beasts that's out in the corn patch. I got all this stuff that is, if you can just imagine, cumulatively, all of it together. He decides it's time to make a mass tactical retreat, and he's got the car going, the truck going, and we're going out through this field. And if we could see this place, the description of you needed a Tiger tank to come out of there, but we were in an old 4-wheel drive, and as he's getting out, I'm looking for these two creatures in the corn patch. I'm looking for whatever is raising cane in the cane patch. I'm looking to see if something's going to fly. I mean, just grow, sprout wings and come off that ridge. And I'm still looking for this other cat that was over on the other side of the fire. I'm terrified, man. I am terrified. And as he leaves, he bumps into something, and I hear him screaming. I later find out from him that he's screaming, "I got one, I got one." I'm looking towards the camp, and whatever these things are going through our camp, and they are tearing that camp to bloody pieces. I see parts of the tent, the canvas, and the tarp that was on it is just being ripped to pieces. I've got the fire glowing, and I'm seeing the same thing that went up the ridge, the same thing that was in front of me. I'm seeing a canine creature that is standing on two legs, half man, half wolf, half something, and it's ripping our camp apart. I got the stuff in the cane patch, and the cane that is beside of us, it's running alongside of the truck. That's what's focusing my attention when he hits something. He hits something that goes down the right side, passenger side of this pickup truck. And I hear it, but it's not, I got too much going on. It's not registering that this thing's trying to get in the truck or in the back end with me. So he hits the creek, bottoms out, comes up, and we tear out.
For years, I thought I had imagined what I had seen on that back road in Alabama until I learned people called it the Dogman. So to preface this, I have always been a little spiritually inclined. I grew up in the southern foothills, and ever since I was young, I've had many encounters with different entities. For years, I thought this was just another one of those weird incidences that I would never be able to explain. Last night, I started a really interesting book that detailed the folkways and lores of southern Appalachia. I was almost finished reading when some of the words caught my eye. She began to talk about the many cryptids known to the region, and that's the first time I had read the words Dogman. I knew immediately just from the name that she was referencing the same creature I had seen several years ago. I was probably 17 at the time, and just like most kids, once I got my own car, I typically stayed out well past dark. We lived in a small community about 10 miles from the nearest town. My mom would tell me not to be out past midnight if I could help it, but if I knew she was tucked in bed, I didn't really feel the need to rush home. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary that night. I drove to town, got me a little midnight snack, and listened to my music in the parking lot while I ate, and then started heading back home. Once we left town and went over the train tracks, it turned into a country road. That road was lined with forests for miles, save for a few little side roads that led to houses tucked back behind the woods. At one point, the trees had been cleared from a half-mile stretch, and I would sometimes pull off to the side of the road to look at the stars there. I didn't pull over that night, but I did slow down to be able to admire the night sky while I drove past. As the road curved, something caught my eye standing behind a section of tall grass a little further up between the field and the road. My first thought was that someone's car broke down, It had happened to me several times on that road, but when I rounded the bend, I didn't see any car. I didn't slow down any more than I had been. I was going maybe 30 miles an hour. I saw what I thought was a tall, broad guy wearing a heather gray hoodie. Then I noticed the gray covered its hands and the dark claws that were resting by its side. Of course, my heart kind of dropped. I took in its posture, the slight hunch of its back, and how still it was standing. That's when I finally let myself look at its face, and I genuinely saw what I thought was a coyote's face, not just staring back at me, but watching me drive past him. As soon as my mind registered what I was looking at, I turned back to the road and stepped on the gas, shouting obscenities because WTF. I glanced back in my rearview mirror to see if he was still there, and I didn't see him. But that didn't stop me from speeding the rest of the way home. I got the car parked as quickly as I possibly could and rushed up the stairs, running through the house to my mom's room. I startled her up and told her everything I saw, all about this coyote creature standing on its back legs. At the time, I wasn't very knowledgeable of cryptids. I have heard of skinwalkers before. That was the only way I could think to explain it. And of course, that terrified me. I've heard of stories of those, and I actually started crying when I thought of that possibility. I had never heard of anyone seeing one that vividly, and I genuinely thought I was doomed. Of course, I was terrified to drive for a long time after that. I refused to go outside at night for months, and I still get nervous anytime I have to travel on a back road at night. I'm not sure if I find it comforting, but I'm glad I have an idea of what it was now. I still have more to read about them now that I know that I'm not the only one who has seen them. But this is the story I have, and to this day, it's one of the most vivid encounters I have ever had. And that's the end of the story. So the story was found on the Dogman subreddit, and I actually wanted to read a comment that someone left on this story to give a little more insight, and they gave a little more knowledge about the Dogman. So this commenter goes on to say, "Thanks for your encounter. It helps add to the general knowledge about these creatures that more people need to know. There are many accounts of these creatures along the roadways, sometimes seen eating roadkill. They have been known to run in front of cars, startling the driver. I believe they do this in hopes of causing an accident. Encounters happen along hiking trails, waterways. Hunters see them. Most all encounters are at night and seem more and more prevalent. They come right up into people's yards looking for food. They can make sounds like people, a woman screaming out in the woods, a baby crying in the woods, a relative calling for help. They bump into the sides of houses, jump on the roof, walk around, and stare in windows. I don't believe they are from here," talking about Earth. "They have been seen associated with portals, which is definitely not part of any known way of travel. This may explain why you can't just go out and hunt them down or capture one. They don't live here in our trees or our caves. True trail cam footage is hard to come by. For now, all we can do is make ourselves aware and use defense. Bear spray, possibly, super bright flashlights to blind, and of course, weapons of some type." Then OP responds to this commenter by saying, "I'm so serious I didn't include this part because I thought it was unrelated, but I actually accused an ex of mine, probably 2 years after I saw it, of knocking on my house and tapping on my window. I even reached out to his parents and they vouched for him and said he wasn't doing it. I heard screaming from across my house for about a month after seeing it." Yeah, so I wanted to include that comment because I found it very interesting, because normally with stories like that with cryptids, Sasquatch, the Dogman, the Mothman, we associate, or for me personally speaking, I've always associated them being earthly beings or like earthly things. It's never once crossed my mind of those creatures being not of Earth. But I feel like, that could be a possibility because it's something that we can explain. There are things of legend, of story, of myth, things like that. And they could be, I've always associated them being like old spirits or like creatures that are maybe older than civilization, or just something that has always existed, but it has hidden away from humanity or things like that. I've never thought of something like the Dogman being not of Earth. Just again, because I feel like a lot of these stories, especially cryptids, like within the US, tend to have a lot of background or like origins of Native Americans, or they have more of that history or stories of those types of creatures. And so because of that, I've always associated being earthly, from Earth. Like I said, maybe just ancient beings or something that's just always existed in our plane. But to think that it's outside of our plane or outside of Earth from somewhere else, whether it be our physical dimension, like the third dimension, just from outer space, or a different dimension. I don't know. They did mention a portal. So, but me personally, like I said, I never put it together that, hey, maybe these creatures aren't from Earth. But I feel like it's such a dumb thing. Like, how could I not have put that together and think of, oh, maybe they're not of Earth?
Okay, I'm gonna keep walking towards it. Might actually get to capture something here. Son of a... All right, whatever you are, you need to leave. Stay out of this place. This is our home. This is our home. You need to leave. You leave now. I don't think it's going to come around for a little bit. I think that'll keep it away for a while. Oh, God. I hope that does it. I really do.
Oh, are you reading? Come in. Hello?
Thank you for watching. If these Dogman encounters sent a chill down your spine, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments below. As always, stay safe, stay aware, question everything, and remember, out there in those woods, something might be watching.